that will reshape everything I thought I knew about the world. The propaganda versus reality. I grew up with certainty. That is what totalitarian societies give you. Absolute certainty about everything. The Führer is always right. The party knows best. Germany is the master race destined to rule Europe. Our enemies are subhuman, degenerate, weak, controlled by international Jewish conspiracies. America specifically is a mongrel nation, a melting pot of racial confusion where Negroes and Jews corrupt the pure white population, where materialism has replaced virtue, where democracy is really just plutocracy controlled by wealthy bankers. I learned this in school, starting in 1933 when I was 14 years old and the National Socialist German Workers' Party took control of education. My teachers were true believers or excellent actors. I never knew which. Geography lessons taught us about living space, about Germany's right to expand, about the inferior lands to our east that needed German organization and efficiency. History lessons taught us about the betrayal of 1918, about the November criminals who stabbed Germany in the back, about the Jewish puppet masters pulling strings in Paris, London, and Washington. We had a mandatory class called Rassenkunde, racial science. I can still remember Herr Dietrich, my biology teacher, pointing to charts showing skull measurements, bone structure comparisons, intelligence distributions. The American, he would say with contempt dripping from every syllable, is a racial chaos, Negro blood mixing with white, Jewish influence corrupting Nordic stock, immigrants from inferior nations diluting any quality that might have existed. They are weak, they are disorganized, they have no discipline, no unity, no capacity for real sacrifice. They lost to Vietnamese guerrillas in the Philippines, needed 2 years to defeat Spain in 1898, required European help to win their own revolution. They are a nation of shopkeepers and gangsters, led by a cripple controlled by his Jewish handlers. The cripple, of course, was Roosevelt. We were told constantly about his polio, about his weakness, about how no healthy Germanic society would follow a physically defective leader. We were shown photographs, I now suspect they were doctored or carefully selected, of American poverty, breadlines during the Depression, Dust Bowl refugees, urban slums. This is democracy, our teacher said. This is capitalism. The few live in luxury while the many starve. They have no social organization, no concept of the national community, no understanding that individual must sacrifice for the collective good. The military propaganda was even more specific. During my training with the 21st Panzer Division in early 1942, our officers spent considerable time explaining the American military threat, or rather the lack thereof. The American soldier, Hauptmann Richter told us during a lecture on enemy forces, is poorly trained, unwilling to take casualties, dependent on material superiority because he lacks spiritual strength. He comes from a soft society with indoor plumbing and central heating, where young men have never known hardship, where comfort is valued above honor. When the American encounters real resistance, real soldiers willing to die for their cause, he breaks, he retreats, he calls for his mother. We laughed. We were young German soldiers, products of a society that had glorified military virtues for a decade, and we believed we were the hardest men in the world. We had defeated France in 6 weeks. We had crushed Poland in less. We were driving deep into Russia, approaching Moscow, seemingly invincible. The idea that soft Americans who had never suffered, never sacrificed, never understood true National Socialist dedication could stand against us seemed absurd. And yet, even then, some evidence contradicted the narrative.
I remember Unteroffizier Koch, a veteran of the First World War who had fought against Americans in 1918, saying quietly after one propaganda lecture, "The Americans I faced at Belleau Wood were not soft. They were stubborn, well supplied, and they kept coming even when we killed them. If there is a second round, do not underestimate them." But Koch was old, and we were young, and we assumed his memories were colored by age and defeat.
The propaganda about American industry was particularly deceptive. We were told that American manufacturing was inefficient, controlled by unions that prevented productivity, hampered by capitalist competition that wasted resources through duplication. They cannot mass-produce quality weapons, our training officers insisted. Their tanks are inferior. The M3 Lee is a joke, a high-profile target with inadequate armor. Their aircraft are mediocre. Their ships are built by the lowest bidder. In a war of production, German engineering and organization will triumph. I believed this completely until the afternoon of March 27, 1943, when American P-40 Warhawks caught our column in the open near Meknasi, Tunisia. They came in low, 6 of them in perfect formation, and they destroyed 8 of our trucks and 2 Panzer IVs in a single pass. I survived by throwing myself into a drainage ditch, and as I lay there with my face in the mud and the sound of .50 caliber rounds tearing through metal above me, I had a single thought. These are supposed to be inferior aircraft? The cognitive dissonance was manageable as long as I could rationalize it. We were at the end of a long supply line. We were outnumbered. The Luftwaffe was committed to Russia. It was circumstance, not American quality. I could maintain the framework of belief by explaining away the evidence. Then came capture. Then came the ships that brought us to America, vessels so large and well-maintained that they made our troop transports look like fishing boats. Then came the ports, Norfolk, Virginia, where I saw dozens of ships under construction simultaneously. Massive Liberty ships taking shape on assembly lines like automobiles. Then came the train journey across America, 4 days of watching a nation that showed no signs of suffering, no signs of deprivation, no signs of the weakness and decay we had been promised. Now, standing in the processing line at Camp Hood with 400 other confused prisoners, holding a metal canteen of cold water, looking at American soldiers who are neither brutal nor incompetent, but rather professionally efficient and disturbingly well-equipped, I am forced to confront a terrible possibility. What if everything we were told was a lie? Hauptmann Schneider feels it too, though he fights it harder. After that first night, after we have been fed, and I must describe this meal because it becomes important, we gather in small groups to discuss what is happening. The meal was bread, real bread with butter, a stew with actual meat, potatoes, vegetables, coffee with sugar, and for dessert, canned peaches. Not a feast, but more food than I often ate as a soldier in the Wehrmacht when we were supposedly winning. This is temporary, Schneider insists to a group of us sitting on footlockers in the barracks. This is for Red Cross inspection, or perhaps this camp is special, a showcase they bring inspectors to. The real camps, the camps we do not see, are probably brutal. Remember what we know about American society, the capitalism that creates poverty, the racial conflicts, the Jewish manipulation. This kindness is false, a facade. Ober Giefrem Müller, the Bavarian farm boy, shakes his head slowly. Hauptmann, with respect, how do they maintain a facade across thousands of miles? We have been traveling for 2 weeks since capture. At every stop, every camp, every train station, we have seen the same abundance. How many showcase camps do they have? How much do they spend on deception?
The Americans are wealthy from exploiting Europe through loans and trade, Schneider counters, his voice taking on the lecturing tone of someone reciting memorized ideology. They have resources because they are protected by oceans, because they have never known real war on their soil, because Jewish financiers funnel wealth to them. None of this changes their fundamental weakness. Resources without spirit are meaningless. I want to believe him. Believing him would be easier, but I keep thinking about the electric fans, about the casual waste of power, about the American sergeant who handed me water without hatred in his eyes, about the German-American interpreter who spoke to us like we were human beings rather than vermin. And I think about Herr Dietrich, back in my school, explaining with absolute certainty how racial science proved American inferiority. And I wonder,